Welcome to Bibliophiles Anonymous, episode 49. I'm Denise.
And I'm Jess.
And tonight we're really excited. We are talking about the latest book from Laurie R. The Bones of Paris.
Yay!
So,
ARCs.
Yes, we were very lucky to get this ARC from Net Galley, so thank you very much, Net Galley.
Net Galley is like the awesomest thing ever.
It's pretty cool, I have to admit. I haven't taken advantage of it as much as you have, but it's a really cool thing that we've kind of gotten involved with here.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of reviews of stuff that I've read, but I can't post till, next week.
Yeah.
So there should be a couple of new book review posts up in the next week or two.
Well, I mean, technically we're kind of putting this one out a little bit early. This book doesn't officially come out until September 10th, so you'll have a couple of days before you can actually get it. But I had kind of mixed feelings for it.
Yeah, so did I.
But we will get into that. We will not spoil anything because there's a pretty good, crazy ending.
Yeah.
So, not necessarily unexpected, but
No.
definitely crazy and something that you need to experience for yourself. So,
It's kind of creepy.
Well, the whole thing was creepy.
Well, this is true. I think it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think that was the point. But anyway, so before we get started talking about that, let's talk about some of the other books we've been reading this week.
Well, today on my lunch break, I don't think I've put it on Goodreads yet. I don't remember if I did or not, but no, last night I started reading City of Ashes. So apparently I'm going to reread at least the original 3 books before I read the Infernal Devices again and read Clockwork Princess.
Uh-huh. I need to read the Infernal Devices. I read the first book, but then I think the problem was I had a hard time finding the second book because it had just come out not that long ago.
Yeah.
And I couldn't buy it because I had the first book in paperback and it was still in hardcover, so you know how that goes. But it was just, I could never find it in the library because it was so new and her books are so popular. So it just never happened.
Yeah, see, what happened with me with the second book is I went to, this is when I was going to the library a lot, and they got it in. It was in their catalog. And I put myself on the waiting list, and for like 3 or 4 weeks, I was on the waiting list, and I was like the next person in line.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who checked it out never brought it back. It never came back in. Because they call you when it comes in so you can come pick it up. Well, this is when I was going like once a week. And I would always ask about it. Well, no, it hasn't come back in yet. Well, finally, somebody came along and donated an extra copy. And they gave it to me. And it was weird because it was a UK copy. And I'm not entirely sure how it ended up in a library in Alabama. Because this is when the book first came out, and it was still in hardback, and this was a paperback copy from the UK. I'm like, okay.
Well, just take it,
We'll go with it. Whatever. So that's how I ended up reading the second book. But, now I have them all as ebooks, so.
Yeah, I just need, that's one that I'm going to. Once I actually catch up on the rest of these books that are sitting here, I'm probably going to go back and read the Infernal Devices, because I enjoyed the first book. I thought it was really good. It's just I haven't made it to the next ones yet.
Yeah, well, the second one was really good too, so I have high hopes for the third one.
Right.
I've been pretty pleased with all of the books so far.
Right.
Which is why I'm ridiculously excited about The Dark Artifices, which comes out.
That's going to be interesting.
Next year, yeah. Well, what? If I'm not, no, it comes out in 2015 because next year is the final Mortal Instruments book.
Okay.
Yeah. The final Infernal Devices is this year, the final Mortal Instruments is next year, and the new Shadowhunter series starts in 2015. Because she can't really do the new one until she finishes Mortal Instruments, because The Dark Artifices takes place 5 years after the Mortal Instruments.
Right, that makes sense.
So yeah, it comes out in 2015.
Yeah, and the last Mortal Instruments is City of Heavenly Fire, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. I've been on a John Green kick lately.
I noticed.
Yeah, because I just posted on my personal blog, I just posted a review of Paper Towns, which I actually read a while ago. I'm trying to get caught up on some of my book reviews over there, but I also want to go ahead and write up the ones for books that I've just finished because I'm afraid that I'm going to forget a lot of stuff.
Well, see,
And
you should do what I did when I read those ARCs I got. I
yeah.
read them and wrote the review and just saved the document, and when it gets time where I can post them, I can just copy and paste it.
Yeah, see, that would be the smart thing to do,
Well,
but I never seem to do it.
Or, you can post date entries on your blog so that they don't post.
I know. And I do that for a lot of my posts. It's just for some reason the book reviews they just take longer, or I have to think more. Maybe that's it. But right now I'm reading An Abundance of Catherines, which is
such an interesting title.
I love that title so much. It's probably my favorite title of all his books. It's not my favorite of his books, but it's my favorite title. And it's about this boy. I think he's 19. And he's a former child prodigy, so he's like scary smart. And he has dated and been dumped by 19 girls, all with the name Catherine.
I would stop dating people named Catherine.
No, he's decided that like people have a type, and girls named Catherine is his type. Yeah. So he's decided that the way to not be dumped again is to develop this basically like this mathematical equation to figure out exactly what happens with his relationships. Like I said, he is one of those people who's like scary smart.
Yeah.
And he ends up going on this road trip with his friend trying to basically get over Catherine the 19th. And yeah, they're all numbered with Roman numerals.
Well, you gotta find some way to tell them apart.
But it's really cute and funny, and while we were reading The Bones of Paris, I needed something cute and funny to kind of fall back on from time to time. So that's why I picked it up. And plus, I finally bought a copy of it. It was the only John Green book that I didn't have a copy of. And I found it at Ollie's for $1.99 in paperback.
Or where you found the Kristen Kishore book, wasn't it?
Yeah. I love that place. It's the weirdest selection of books because it's all a closeout material. So you can find like book 3 of a series, and they'll have like dozens of them, but that's the only book they'll have by that author. So
I think that's kind of where Dollar General gets their books.
It could be, yeah.
For all those who remember my celebration over I work at Dollar General, because we'll have hardback books for $5.
Yeah.
But it'll be a bunch of a certain book, and it's likely to be the third in a series. But the other day they were on sale for $2.50, so I bought 2. Which one of them was a later book in a series, but it's a series that I collect, and it's one I didn't have.
Well, there you go.
So it worked out. It's Fever Dream by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. It's in the Pendergast series, which is a very way out in left field on the far backside of weird series.
Oh.
And the other one I got is actually book 1 in their new spin-off series of that. It is called Gideon's Sword. So I scored. I got both of those in hardback for $5.
Very nice.
Yes, we have paperbacks too, but there wasn't anything particularly interesting looking in those. So.
Yeah, I bought Abundance of Catherines, and I also bought, what else did I buy? I bought another book. Oh, I brought Winter Girls by Laurie R. Anderson.
See, I have a job again, which means I'm going to be spending money on books again.
Won't that be fun?
Yes. Amazon is my friend.
Amazon is everybody's friend.
And, this just means another trip to McKay sometime soonish.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, there's stuff I want and need. Okay, this is not a matter of want. This is stuff I need. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And being gainfully employed and having money to spend on books is awesome, even if I have less time to read them now.
Well, there's a trade-off.
But the good thing is, I'm allowed to have my phone when I'm on break, and I can put books on there and read them. So.
Well, there you go.
It's not so bad. I get a 30-minute break, and I can hold my phone in my hand and read while I'm eating, so.
Absolutely. So should we go ahead and talk about this book here?
Yeah, we should probably do that. Maybe we can have an episode that doesn't go ridiculously over an hour.
If we're going to, it's probably going to be this one.
Yes.
So.
Oh, yeah. What I didn't know when I requested this book from Net Galley, and I looked, I checked to make sure because, you kind of, poke fun at me for continually getting later books in a series from Net Galley and forcing you to read, 6 books in 2 weeks.
Well, you've done it a couple times.
So I checked when I saw this book. I was like, oh, I will check and see. And I did not find anything anywhere about it being the second book in a series. Well, one of my friends on Goodreads posted that they had started reading it. They had got the ARC of it. And I commented that we were going to be doing a podcast episode on it. And she's like, oh, well, it's book 2 in a series. And I was like, what? And lo and behold, sure enough, it was. The thing is, I don't think the first book really affects the plot of this one all that much. It's more of a, you kind of feel like you're missing something throughout the whole series as far as backstory goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I'm looking at the first book on Goodreads right now. It's called Touchstone.
Yes.
And it looks several of the same characters, but it looks like Bennett Gray is actually the main character of that book as opposed to Harris, whose last name I could never figure out how to pronounce.
Stuyvesant, I guess.
Stuyvesant? Okay, we'll go with that.
I don't really know.
We're going to call him Harris.
Yes, we are.
Because I can't. Anyway. Yeah, but yeah, it looked like there was a lot of, like you said, backstory. But in some ways, it kind of reminded me of the Dan Brown books. And you don't have to read all of them, like Da Vinci Code. You can read Angels and Demons or Da Vinci Code, like, separately. Yeah. You don't have to read them together. And there's enough backstory included in there so that you know that something happened.
Yeah, the general framework. Yeah, I don't think you have to read these in order.
No.
But I think I may try to hunt down the other one just for completion's sake.
Right.
Because, there's hints at a story of what happened between Harris and Sarah and Bennett that I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah.
That has no direct bearing upon this particular plot, but I want to know because I'm nosy. But, so basically this is, it's set in the 1920s, 1929 maybe, in Paris.
Right.
Which is interesting in and of itself.
Yes. Oh, definitely. No, the setting was very interesting. I mean, I love books that are set, well, anywhere in Europe really, because it's a place that I've always wanted to visit.
Yes.
I would love to visit Paris someday, and especially, reading something that was set in a prior time period is always interesting too. So just kind of that combination was really cool. I did get tired, though, of the constant complaining about how hot it was.
Yeah, that kind of did. It's hot in Paris. We get it. Shut up.
It's, you don't want to be in Paris during the summer, apparently, because it is really, really hot and it smells. Okay, you only have to say it a couple of times and we get it, but it seemed like, especially at the beginning of the book, every other page there was a mention of how stinking hot it was. Like, okay, we got it. Move on.
Yeah. Well, my biggest issue, I think, with the book, I mean, the writing was good.
It was very good.
But it took so long for stuff to start happening, and that really kind of annoys me. I like books that are kind of, something's going on all the time, and this one didn't really, pick up and start running until about the last quarter of the book.
Yeah. That's a fair assessment.
If she'd have had, some more interesting thing going on in the first, 3/4 of the book, it would have been much better.
Yeah. I mean, it was really, really slow. And, like, we have it on Kindle. And so it's always difficult when you're reading ebooks to figure out, I mean, I know it says a percentage of how far you are, but because it's not a physical book and you can't actually see how
Yeah.
big it is. It's hard to tell how far you've come and how far you still have to go. It for a good part of it, it felt like it went on for a really long time.
Yeah.
And looking at it on Goodreads, it says that it's 432 pages, which isn't a gigantic book.
No. It's decent sized.
Yeah, I mean it's not a tiny book. It's not a novella, but it's certainly not. We're not talking like Order of the Phoenix long.
No. It's not 800 pages.
Yeah. But anyway, the story starts out with Harris, who has been hired. He's a private investigator. He's American, and he's in Paris in 1929. And he is, like I say, he's a private investigator, and he got a letter asking for him to look into the disappearance of this young woman, Philippa Crosby.
Yes.
They called her Pip, which is just cute. And so basically she hasn't been in contact with her family back in the US, and they're worried about her. They don't know where she is, and Harris actually has met her previously. They had kind of a fling.
Yeah.
And so he remembers her and that she was really cute and fun, and he agrees to try and track her down. And he meets her roommate.
Who he proceeds to have a fling with.
Yeah, that's his thing, apparently.
Yeah.
But her name's Nancy. And he when he visits their apartment, he notices that Pip has a lot of strange things in her bedroom. Like there's a lot of art on the walls, which isn't that strange, but there's also a lot of photography. And one of the pictures is, he couldn't tell exactly what it was, but then he found out, is looking at it, or I think maybe Nancy told him. Did Nancy explain it, what it was?
No, I think he realized what it was.
Or he realized what it was. It was actually, she has a really big burn scar on her body, and the picture was a close-up of it. And he thought that was really strange, why she would have that hanging on her wall.
Well, I think it's kind of strange as well.
As do I. As do probably most people who would read this.
I mean, as someone who has a fairly large burn scar herself, it just strikes, I mean, I'm like, I don't want a close-up picture of my scar hanging on my wall.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I had third-degree burns covering like 75% of my foot when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
So I have quite a large burn scar on my right foot. I just can't imagine. I mean, that's just weird. I wouldn't want a picture of my scar hanging on the wall somewhere.
No. But that's not even the weirdest thing that's in her room.
Well, no, the whole display boxes thing.
Yeah, apparently that was a thing for like surrealist artists.
Yeah.
Back then. But it was a display box, and it had like almost like a shadow box, and it would have several different squares, and each one had something different in it, and it could be anything. It could be part of a photograph. It could be any kind of found object. But one of them looked like bones.
Yes, there were bones, like finger bones.
Yeah.
Because, that's not creepy.
Not creepy at all.
No.
But he also finds that her passport is still there, her identification is still there, so he thinks that this is all really strange. And he finds that she's been doing some work, not just like working, but she was also getting really involved in the artistic community in this Parisian neighborhood. And she had been doing some modeling for this photographer named Man Ray, and who's a real person.
Yes, there
were a lot of characters in here who were real people.
They mentioned Hemingway several times.
Yeah, Ernest Hemingway, Cole Porter.
Yeah. And the Grand Guignol Theater was real.
Yeah.
And it kept making me think of Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab because I'm pretty sure they have a scent called Grand Guignol.
I don't want to smell it. If you want my honest opinion, I really don't want to know. But we'll get to that in a second. Um,
But
but
yeah, there was a lot of these real, and I like books that do that.
oh yeah, I mean the way that that part of the book was really really interesting because it was easy to see this whole story kind of dropped in to this part of history, really.
Yeah. I thought, like I said, I like books that do that, that take real people and kind of weave a story in through them.
And especially when they do it well, because you could tell. Now, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, obviously, but you could just tell with the way that the details were woven in there that she did her homework.
Yeah.
This wasn't just some, throw it together and there it is. I mean, she really researched Paris and the 20s and the type of people who would be in this particular circle. And so that was really cool the way she did that.
Yeah, it was, well, like I said, I think probably the grandmaster of doing this is probably Dan Brown, taking, all these real paintings and real people and real elements of history and weaving a story through them. He does it so very well. But she did, as far as that goes, she did a very good job of making a believable story and putting these people in there and making it reasonable.
Mhm.
It's just, it was kind of slow for the first three-fourths of the book.
Yeah, very. um, and I think this is part of why I'm having a little bit of a hard time remembering certain details about it. Uh, because there are large sections of the book where basically Harris is just wandering around asking people about Pip.
Asking if they've seen her, that's a good first portion of the book is he has a picture of her and he's wandering around asking people if they've seen her, if they remember her, who she was, hanging around with. And
Right.
she was hanging around with Man Ray, and she was hanging around with this guy, Charmentier, I guess.
Yeah.
Charmentier. And
Who's a count.
yeah.
So.
And he apparently likes to he's a sponsor, I guess, of the Grand Guignol Theater.
Yes.
Which, if you've never heard of it, look it up. It's a real thing that they had in Paris. Apparently, it was a place where they put on really creepy plays, and they did like very realistic looking blood, guts, and gore.
Yes.
And Charmentier is apparently really into this weird, creepy stuff.
Well, and he's not the only one.
Well, no, I mean, apparently that was a thing back in that.
Yeah, that was a whole kind of artistic movement back then. And so, as soon as Harris finds out that Pip was kind of hanging around these people, like she did some acting and she did some modeling, and he was just kind of starting to get concerned because you didn't know for sure whether this was a safe place for her to be, because anybody who was that enthusiastic about basically these scenes of torture and death and just nasty stuff, all of it is fake in the theater and in these artistic displays, or at least you hope it is. But you don't want to think that somebody that you care about or somebody that you're looking for is in that sort of environment, because when does it stop being fake and start being real?
Yeah, you have to kind of wonder about the mental stability of people who are like super, super into stuff like that and participate in it, because you wonder when they're going to, how long they can fake it before they decide, I wonder what it would be like for real.
Yeah. And another person who I believe is also real is Dee Dee Moreau.
Really?
I think so.
Because he was really a creep.
Yeah. I'm not 90% sure because one of the reasons I recognized a lot of these names is because I did end up taking an art history class, and I'm almost positive that he is, but I'm gonna find out. Maybe not.
But yeah, he's the one that created these things, the boxes, the shadow box type things, and called them his displays.
I can't find it now. Well, okay. Well, we'll go on. Maybe he is created an actual character as opposed to a real person, but for some reason I thought that I recognized that name. Oh well, doesn't matter. Anyway, but yeah, he was, and his specialty, I guess, or what he really liked, he really, really liked bones.
Yeah, which is weird.
He thought that they were just beautiful. And so people would leave him. He had like a collection box outside his house, and people who followed his work would leave him things, and sometimes they were dead animals. And this was really gross. And then he had these boxes where he would put them in, and he found these little tiny beetles.
Yeah.
That basically would eat all of the flesh off the bones. Okay, that's all I'm going to say because it was gross. Anyway, so he has these boxes, and
that's actually a real thing that some forensic anthropologists do.
That doesn't make it any less gross.
But I mean, even now, modern day, that's still the most efficient way to clean bones.
Well, that's great, but I don't really want to see it.
It doesn't really bother me. I read all the Kathy Reichs books, and I watched Bones, and I've seen them do it on there. And I have a surprisingly strong stomach because there's only ever been one episode of that show that even remotely made me gag, but we won't talk about that.
Okay.
Because it was moderately disgusting, and even thinking about it makes me want to gag. So
yeah, let's not think about it. Okay. So yeah, you have all of this really strange stuff going on with all of these artists and photographers and Charmentier, who's kind of sponsoring a lot of them. And throughout all of this, Harris keeps going around and questioning people and basically making a nuisance of himself.
Yeah.
In many ways. I had a problem with that a little bit just because there were many places where he just wasn't that likable as a character. Because for someone being a private investigator, he wasn't very good at it. Because he was incredibly obvious when he was asking people. I mean, there was no subtlety to it at all. And he was just, I don't know.
Well, I think he's supposed to be sort of an anti-hero anyway.
Yeah.
He's not supposed to be covered in glory and...
No, I mean, he definitely has his own dark side, and you see some of it. I mean, he's definitely not one of the perfect, ride in on a white horse type of heroes.
No.
And that's fine, but there was just certain times, he kept getting in fights in, like, these clubs and bars and stuff, and it's like, oh, come on, please. That's not the way to do this.
Well, to be honest, I think that's a part of that bigger picture we're missing by not having read the first book.
That could be.
Because I think a lot of it is him trying to deal with what happened in the other book. Which you learn a little bit about. He runs into... You find out he's talking about this girl he was in love with, Sarah Gray.
Right.
And he ends up running into her in Paris, which just throws a wrench into the works big time.
Uh-huh.
Especially when he finds out that she's engaged to the cop he's been talking to and working with on this case. But I think a lot of his going around looking for fights, not really trying to be subtle, I think it's kind of a self-destructive behavior, kind of like some of the crap Jace pulled in the Mortal Instruments.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Because, see, in the first book, you're told that Sarah was blown up and lost her hand.
Right, there was a bomb of some sort.
And yeah, and she lost a hand, and Harris sort of felt responsible for that, and then she sort of said, "See you later, I'm going to find myself," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think this is a lot of the reasons the stuff he does is dealing with the fallout from that.
That could be. Yeah. I mean, we are coming at this not knowing what happened in this first book.
Right.
Because obviously the stuff with the Greys, you said what happened with Sarah, and then her brother Bennett actually was also involved in, I think this was during the war, where he stepped on a mine and basically died, but then came back.
Right.
They were able to save his life, and he sees it as that he was reborn because now he's kind of psychic in a way.
Yeah, he explains it as, the reason a newborn cries all the time is basically sensory overload.
Yeah. I liked this explanation, actually. It was really interesting, an interesting way to think about it.
And he said it's not that he is psychic or knows anything that anybody else wouldn't know. It's that he can't shut anything out.
He's just really super sensitive to everything.
So he sees it all. He doesn't miss the things that most people miss.
Right.
So it's not necessarily psychic, but he is sort of like a human lie detector.
Yeah. And it can seem like psychic.
Yeah.
Because that was the best way that, before he gave that explanation, when Harris was talking about him, I was like, oh, well, he ended up as a psychic because of whatever happened during the war. But when he started to explain it a little bit more, it was like, okay, well, it could be kind of seen that way, but it's really not anything supernatural. It's just
kind of odd.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Harris is wandering around Paris, being belligerent and getting drunk and getting in fights, and it gets worse after he stumbles across Sarah, and he finds out that she's working for Charmentier and doing a lot of stuff for the Grand Guignol and helping him throw his really weird and twisted parties, which Harris finagles an invitation to so that he can talk to Sarah. And all this time, you're like, you're supposed to be looking for Pip.
Yeah. There were a couple times where it seemed like he would get he got distracted.
Yeah, it was like something shiny floated by, and we lost our train of thought here. It was like, he gets distracted by, he's looking for Pip, and then he starts walking out with her roommate, and it's like, really?
Yeah.
Conflict of interest much?
Yeah, just a little one.
And then, Sarah, he finds Sarah, and then things really sort of get derailed there for a while. And I'm like...
Well, sort of, but he still has his suspicions that this circle of people knows something.
Involved. Yeah. Somebody knows something. Somebody is involved somehow. And he... Eventually, and this is not really a huge spoiler because you kind of suspect from the very beginning that Pip's dead. When he finally admits to himself that she's dead.
Yeah, he's not looking to find her. He's looking to
find her body.
Yeah.
He's not looking for a missing persons. He's looking for a murder victim. He starts putting some more things together. I mean, he's been in touch with the police, and he has a list of missing persons, and he finally starts realizing that he doesn't just need missing persons. He needs murders. He needs victims. He needs bodies that have turned up.
Right.
Well, after talking to Sarah, he goes to see Dee Dee Moreau. Sarah talks about how odd he is. Apparently, he made Sarah's prosthetic hands. And he's weird, and he gives her the heebie-jeebies. And so Harris wants to go meet him. So he does, and he gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah. He is not somebody I would want to be alone in a room with.
He's not somebody I would want to be in a room with, period, alone or otherwise. But yeah, he's the creepy artist that's making these display boxes, and he made Sarah's hand, and Harris becomes convinced that he has something to do with all of this. So he ends up sneaking back into the guy's house. He breaks in when the guy's gone somewhere and the maid's gone to church or something.
Oh, they both went to church.
Yeah.
That was the only place that Moreau ever really went on a regular basis. He was pretty much a hermit.
Yeah. So he breaks into his house and finds his secret room, and he finds these pictures of these girls. And he's like, these could be fake, it could be acting, because, that whole Grand Guignol and this surrealist, violent, death-oriented society they're living in. So he takes these pictures, and he has copies made, and he sends them to Bennett, and that's how Bennett gets brought into the story.
Right, because each of these pictures, they show a face of a woman, and the expression on her face is just one of terror and fear and pain, and the pictures have also all been like ripped into pieces.
Right.
So yeah, and Harris doesn't want to send them to Bennett because he knows what this type of thing would do to Bennett, because Bennett has this gift of this super sensitivity and being able to be really intuitive, but a lot of times he really doesn't like using it. I mean, he doesn't leave his house very often at this point because it's so hard for him to do it. Right. Just being around, especially being around a lot of people at one time, is just really difficult, and especially dealing with something that involves a lot of pain or torment. He internalizes it, and so, Harris knew that trying to pull him into this whole investigation was not going to be easy on Bennett, but he didn't know what else to do.
Right. He knew that Bennett would know if the pictures were faked or if they were real.
Right.
If they were actually women who had been tortured or, injured or something. So.
And I wanted, before we move on, I did want to say something about the party. The big party at Charmentier's house.
Yeah.
Because there's one thing in there that was really interesting. I mean, it's a big party, it's full of people, and it's obviously got this same kind of motif, if you will. Like, the room is decorated with all of these tapestries, and they're called Dance Macabre.
Yeah.
Because it's all these pictures of people dancing, but within all of them is like a Grim Reaper type figure.
Yeah, some sort of representation of death.
Yeah. And for some reason I found this really, really funny, but the punch that they're drinking has dry ice in it.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that these people had ever really seen dry ice. So it was like foaming and like, had all this fake fog like all over the place, and everybody thought that was just the most amazing thing, and I'm like, oh, we do that all the time now.
Yeah.
That's not that big a deal. But one of the centerpieces of this party is this huge 4-sided clock. And this clock was really interesting because it not only told the time, but it also looked like it had a lot of like astrological parts to it. I mean, there were a whole bunch of different hands and different faces, so that it was not just telling the time.
Right.
It was telling the date, it was telling the season, it was telling, like I said, astrological, position of the stars or whatever. But this was pretty much the big centerpiece of this party before they had whatever else entertainment that they had. I think it was a woman who turned into a skeleton or something like that, but...
Yeah, after screaming bloody murder.
Yeah. And, but that clock was really, really interesting and becomes slightly important.
Slightly?
No, but I'm not going to say any more about that.
Yeah. It's quite involved in the ending.
Yeah. But the thing that was difficult, though, Harris suspects Man Ray. He suspects Dee Dee Moreau, and he suspects that Charmentier might have something to do with everything because he's involved in all of this stuff too. But when he's talking to the police inspector, Doucette, he finds out that the police are not going to investigate Charmentier because, number one, he's part of the nobility. He's part of the aristocracy, so they're not going to do that. He's a war hero who also donates to all of these really good causes, helping war victims and the families of people who were killed in the war. And he also donates a lot of money to the police department, and a lot of their fundraising comes from him. So the police department are not really interested in investigating anything about Charmentier, or really looking that deeply into any of the people that Charmentier is protecting.
Right, or is associated with.
Yeah. So that just becomes all kinds of complicated, because even if Harris knows, and he does know, that Pip was involved with Man Ray, the police aren't really going to do much about it.
Nope.
And that was something that was kind of interesting. Just, I guess, and part of it's the time period, and part of it, I'm sure, is from being in another country. But just the way that the police worked, it's so different.
Yeah.
From what we're used to in, the U.S. and in this time period. Because
I think a lot of it, like you say, is, being in a different place, but I think most of it has to do with the time period.
Well, yeah.
Because, now aristocracy is not that big of a deal anymore. I mean, rich people still kind of get their way more so than not so rich people. But I don't think it would be like, oh no, he's count, we can't do that. They just don't care as much about that anymore.
Well, and I don't know as far as how it is in different countries, but in the U.S., it's almost like celebrities have become our aristocracy.
Yeah.
Because how many times do you see celebrities getting arrested or getting in trouble and nothing really happens to them, whereas if it happened to somebody else, they'd end up spending some time in jail or,
yeah,
more than just a fine.
That's true.
But it's this, we're getting to the point in the book, it's really hard to, and part of it's because a lot of it got repetitive after a while.
Yeah.
But it's hard to talk a lot more about the book without giving away the ending, and I don't think we should do that.
No, because it was a doozy.
Mm-hmm.
It got really creepy.
Yeah.
And yeah. I mean, I can't really say that I was surprised as to who the bad guy was.
No, I wasn't either.
But the way that all came about just was kind of like, wow.
Yeah, because you're not dealing with, you're dealing with people who kind of get off on these weird, violent, shocking situations.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these people. So, and that's part of what, I wasn't surprised when I found out who the bad guy was either, but I also wouldn't have been surprised if it was a whole host of other people.
This is true.
It could have, yeah, it was that guy, but it could have been several others.
Yeah, that's true. But I think in the back of my mind, I sort of always knew that it was that one.
You knew that he was involved somehow. He wasn't innocent. And a couple of them actually turned out to be innocent, or as innocent as they can be when they are, mystified and just enthralled by these weird, kind of sick stuff. Well, they were innocent in this particular case. I'll put it that way.
They were innocent of having anything to do with Pip.
Yeah.
But maybe not so innocent of a few other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that we can't really say much more about what happens after that without giving away the ending, and this is definitely an ending that you need to read for yourself.
Yeah.
Like I said, it takes till about the last quarter of the book, but when it picks up and takes off, buddy, let me just tell you.
It picks up and takes off.
It's at a dead run from there till the end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why when I was it seemed to take a really long time to finish this book, but once I got past, I think I stopped last night because I'll just say this is not one of the books that I wanted to read right before going to bed. I found that the hard way.
I can see that.
It brings up some really weird dreams, let me tell you. But anyway, hey, that's probably why I started reading An Abundance of Catherine's. I'm like, I need something that's cute and funny and just, not about, like, bones.
And murders.
And murders and like...
Weird stuff.
Yeah. But once I think I was up last night or yesterday, I was up to about 80%, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta finish this whole thing, or I'm not gonna be able to talk about it tonight. And then all of a sudden, it was like that last 20% just went by in a flash, because then that's when everything started coming together. And
yeah,
again, you weren't entirely it could have been any number of people, but then you found out for sure what you were dealing with, and it was just like, oh, okay. It's even more twisted than I thought it was going to be.
This is true.
That's hard.
So,
it was pretty twisted to begin with.
Definitely, if you like the whole thriller, murder, mystery type book, this is worth checking out. But I would probably suggest finding Touchstone first.
Yeah, that's probably the best.
Because I think a lot of our problems that we had, like with, the character of Harris and some of the stuff he was doing that didn't really make a lot of sense, I think those gaps would be filled in if you read the first one.
Probably.
I think it was more of a, forest for the trees kind of situation.
Yeah, that's very possible.
And not seeing the bigger picture type thing, which I think I mentioned a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think definitely, if you're going to check this out, find Touchstone first and read it, and then read this one, which you have plenty of time to do because this one doesn't come out till, for a few more days.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like there's a third book in this series yet.
Well, there was several years between Touchstone and this one, though.
Yeah.
Touchstone was, 2007?
Let me see. Yeah, 2007.
So, yeah, there may not be an announcement for a third book for a couple of years.
Yeah, well, with the amount of research that goes into these things, it wouldn't surprise me.
Right, you have to have time.
This takes a lot more time than...
Yeah. Than, writing a Mortal Instruments book.
Yeah, where you can make up a lot of what you need.
But yeah, I mean, I would recommend it to people who are a fan of the genre.
Oh, definitely.
Which, I mean, I am to an extent. I do like stuff like this, and I did enjoy it, and I will probably find Touchstone and read it, and if she writes more stuff, I might, look into reading it too.
She has a couple of other series out.
Yeah, I need to look into those.
Yeah, she's, let me see. Oh, and just in case you were wondering, on Goodreads, when you go up to look at the books in this series, she does say that The Adventures of Harris Stuyvesant, whatever his last name is, that they are standalone thrillers.
So you don't have to read them in order.
You don't have to read them in order. I mean, I'm guessing that it's probably easier if you do, just so you get to know the characters a little bit better. But yeah, I guess you don't have to. But she has, looks like 2 other series. The Kate Martinelli series. Let's see, what's that about? Oh, Kate Martinelli is a lesbian homicide detective. It takes place in San Francisco. They look more contemporary.
Yeah, well.
So that would be another, like, your crime fiction, I'm guessing. And then the Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes series. Now, that one has 12 books in it.
Yeah, that's the one I really want to look into.
Yeah, this one takes place in 1915 and involves a 15-year-old girl named Mary Russell who meets up with Sherlock Holmes when he's retired and a lot older.
See, I love Sherlock Holmes, so...
Yeah, this will probably be interesting for you then, because it looks like it's kind of trying to continue his story past when he was actually solving crime.
It's pretty cool. I will definitely have to look for those.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah. That should about do it for tonight.
Yeah, I think so. Now, next week is special. And you want to know why next week is special? Well, I'll tell you.
It's our 50th episode.
It is our 50th episode, and it is our 1-year anniversary.
Yep.
So yay us.
And it's all the episode will also release on my birthday.
Well, woohoo.
So
it's a special episode all around.
Yeah.
So we're not going to have like any specific focus. We're going to just kind of talk about some of the things that we've done over this year, and I think I haven't talked to you about this yet because I like just, springing stuff while we're on the air. But
I'm flexible.
Yeah, but I think we probably need to do something special for the anniversary. Like maybe a giveaway.
Ah.
What do you think?
I think giveaways are good.
Yeah. So, more on that next week. So that means you have to come back and celebrate our anniversary with us. So, there you go.
Because you might get free stuff.
Yeah, and who doesn't love free stuff? But
free stuff is awesome.
Yeah. So, if you have read any of Laurie R. King's books, and you have anything that you want to say about them, we would love to hear what you think of her, because we enjoyed this book. I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more, like you said, if we had read the first book too. But she says that they're supposed to work as standalone books too, and this one did to a certain extent, I think. Yeah. It was just there were some things that kind of got on my nerves is a little bit of a strong word for it, but just I think if I had known a little bit more about the characters, then maybe I wouldn't have been so hard on them. Yeah. Because it was obvious that they've been through some stuff. But that's all right. Anyway, if you've read any of her books and want to tell us about them and explain maybe why we are missing something, you can contact us by email. We are bibliophiles.podcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter. We are at BibAnonPodcast. And also, since next week is our anniversary, if there are any moments in the show that you have really enjoyed that are your favorites, let us know those too, and we will include them in our episode next week. Because this has been really a lot of fun, and to be completely honest, I never thought that we would make it a year.
I didn't either, because we both kind of have, we don't have ADD, we have ADOS, Attention Deficit Ushani.
Yeah.
And when shiny things float by, we tend to get distracted, and the fact that we have stuck with this and done an episode every week.
Pretty much, yeah.
Or almost every week. There were 2 weeks that we didn't have episodes.
Yeah.
Out of the past year.
So
that's pretty impressive.
I'm proud of us.
Granted, we did kind of fly by the seat of our pants for a couple of months there, and what are we going to talk about tonight? Oh, let's do this.
Yeah. Well, that's to be expected. We were still learning. So, I think we're getting a little bit better at this whole podcasting thing.
Hey, that's something to talk about. We can talk about our process and what goes into making an episode.
we turn on the recording equipment and babble on for about an hour.
Yeah. There's not a lot of thought or structure that goes into these things. But
yeah, we don't plan much really.
And don't forget that we have merchandise now.
Oh, we do, yes. Be sure to check out our Cafe Press store. You can find links for that at our website, which is www.bibliophiles-anonymous.com. I actually got to see one of our products. My mom came by last night, and she was like, I got your coasters! And she had brought one of the coasters over to my house. And she's like, look at this. And so I'm looking at it. It was very nice quality merchandise. Nice big tile coaster with our logo right there. And it was really nice. So if you would like a coaster or anything else, we've got a lot of stuff there.
Oh, yeah. I've got to order me a t-shirt. I want the Raglan t-shirt. I like that one.
Yeah, I need to get some stuff too. I just haven't had a chance to yet.
I still think you need to get the clock and put it up in your office.
I'm not opposed to that idea, actually. So I might have to do that. But yeah, so definitely check that out. And other than that, I think we are done for this episode.
Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah, so join us next week for our anniversary. 1 whole year. Woohoo!
Woo! And, sort of a mini celebration of my impending adulthood since I'm turning 30.
Oh, well, it's all over now.
It's just downhill from here.
I say that at the ripe old age of 34, so, whatever. No, it's not that bad.
30's just really symbolic, and it's going to bother me.
It's going to be fine.
I'm going to cry.
Don't cry. It's not that big a deal. It's okay. You'll be fine. But in any case, we will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. And until then, bye.
Bye.